Have you ever walked away from a conversation feeling strangely drained, without knowing why? Sometimes manipulation doesn't come from people shouting, demanding, or forcing. The most dangerous kind is subtle. It hides in small moments, in harmless words, in gestures that look innocent. It slips into your life quietly, until one day you realize you're doubting your own thoughts, adjusting your behavior, or giving more than you get, but you can't quite explain how it happened. This video reveals 10 subtle manipulation tactics people use without you noticing. Strategies rooted in psychology, emotional conditioning, and human vulnerability. Once you understand them, you'll start seeing patterns everywhere. In friendships, relationships, workplaces, even within your own family. And the moment you learn to recognize these tactics, something powerful happens. Manipulation loses its control over you. Let's begin. 1. The Selective Vulnerability Trap. Trap manipulators rarely begin by demanding your trust. They earn it by offering a piece of theirs. But the vulnerability they show isn't spontaneous or raw. It's carefully chosen. They open up just enough to make you feel close, to make you feel safe, to make you believe you've been given privileged access to their inner world. And once that happens, most people instinctively respond by revealing something even deeper. It often starts in small moments. Maybe someone tells you about a difficult time in their childhood, their fears, or an emotional struggle they claim they rarely talk about. You feel honored, connected. So you open up too, but you don't realize that they controlled the depth and timing of that moment. Their disclosure was measured, yours was genuine. And later, you notice something strange. They never mention their vulnerability again, but yours slowly becomes a subtle point of leverage. That's the trap. Their openness was a key, not a confession. 2. The Confusion and Clarification Loop. Some people manipulate not by lying, but by making the truth impossibly hard to follow. They speak in circles, shift minor details, change timelines, or blend information in a way that feels slightly off. You try to keep up, but every minute leaves you a little more unsure of what you heard. And right when you start doubting your own memory, they step in with reassurance. Let me explain it better. Suddenly, they become the stable point in a conversation they destabilized in the first place. You may not even notice it happening. Maybe they're explaining plans or talking about a disagreement or recounting something that happened earlier. Details keep changing, and before long, you're leaning on them for clarity. Not because they make sense, but because they make you feel like they're the only one who can. That's the quiet brilliance of this tactic. Confusion breaks your confidence. Their clarity restores it. They control both ends of the loop. 3. The Shifting Baseline Strategy. This tactic is subtle because it never arrives all at once. Instead, it slips into your life in small increments, small enough that you barely register them. Maybe someone starts off warm, consistent, respectful. Then, a week later, they make a slightly sharp comment. 2 weeks later, they interrupt you mid-sentence. A month later, they raise their voice or dismiss something important to you. But somehow, it doesn't feel shocking. Not because it's acceptable, but because every new behavior is only a tiny step away from the last one. The baseline keeps shifting. You adjust without realizing it, like someone slowly turning down the lights in a room. You only notice how dark it is when you try to read something. And that's exactly how the strategy works. By the time the behavior becomes clearly unhealthy, you've adapted to so many small changes that the final step doesn't seem like a leap. It feels like the next logical progression of what has already become normal. 4. The Delayed Approval Technique. Some people manipulate not by criticizing you, but by controlling when they approve of you. They don't give you validation when it naturally fits the moment. Instead, they hold it back. They let you sit with uncertainty just long enough to make you doubt yourself. And then, at the exact moment when you're craving reassurance, they offer a small dose of praise or affection. And that timing is intentional. Imagine sharing something you're proud of, a project, an achievement, a personal win. The reaction you expect never comes. They stay neutral, distant, unimpressed. Hours or even days later, they suddenly compliment you as if it just crossed their mind. The praise feels stronger, more meaningful, because you spent time wondering whether you deserved it. That gap between action and validation becomes psychological leverage. You begin putting in extra effort, unconsciously chasing the approval that always arrives on their schedule, not yours. Bit by bit, they condition you to depend on their timing, not their truth. 5. The strategic silence maneuver. Silence is one of the most underrated manipulation tools. Not the peaceful kind, but the kind designed to make you uncomfortable. It's silence that lingers just a little too long. Silence that appears exactly when you expect a response. Silence that forces you to fill the emotional gap yourself. You ask a question, and they let the quiet stretch. You bring up something important, and they fall still. That pause makes your mind race. Did I say something wrong? Should I explain more? Did I misunderstand? Do I need to fix this? And because humans naturally avoid uncomfortable silence, you start talking, clarifying, apologizing, softening your stance, offering more information than you intended. Without raising their voice or saying a word, they guide the conversation exactly where they want it to go. Strategic silence shifts the balance. It pushes emotional weight onto you while they remain composed, in control, quietly shaping the direction you take. 6. The conditioned kindness pattern. Some manipulators don't use anger or pressure. They use kindness, but only in unpredictable, inconsistent waves. One moment they're warm, attentive, generous. The next, they're cold, distant, or indifferent. You never know which version of them you'll get, and that uncertainty creates emotional tension that keeps you invested. It's the same pattern that makes slot machines addictive. Rewards delivered randomly feel more powerful than rewards delivered consistently. Maybe they compliment you unexpectedly or show affection on a day when you least expected it. Then, when you rely on that warmth, it disappears. The inconsistency makes you chase the good moments harder, thinking something you did must have influenced them. You try to be more agreeable, more understanding, more patient, all in the hope of triggering the next wave of kindness. Conditioned kindness doesn't trap you with negativity. It traps you with the memory of how good things can be and the hope that you can get that version of them again. 7. The role reversal flip. When a manipulator senses they're being confronted, they don't defend themselves directly. They shift roles. In an instant, they position themselves as the wounded one, the misunderstood one, the one who somehow ended up hurt by the very issue you're trying to resolve. And suddenly you're no longer addressing the problem, you're comforting the person causing it. It begins subtly. You point out something that bothered you, and instead of responding to your concern, they sigh softly, look down, or withdraw emotionally. They might say, "I didn't know you thought so little of me," or "I guess I'm always the bad guy," or "I'm trying so hard and it's never enough." And just like that, your frustration transforms into guilt. This flip works because emotionally aware people are quick to take responsibility, even for things they didn't cause. The manipulator counts on that empathy. The moment you switch from expressing a boundary to soothing their feelings, the original issue disappears, and their behavior remains untouched. 8. The information framing trick. Some manipulators never lie outright. They simply choose which details to highlight, which ones to minimize, and which ones to leave out, shaping your perception without ever altering the facts. It's one of the smartest forms of manipulation because it feels completely truthful. Technically, nothing they said was false, but the version you believe is the one they wanted you to believe. Imagine someone telling you a story about an argument they had earlier. They emphasize how calm they were, how unreasonable the other person seemed, how they tried their best, and how everything escalated suddenly for no reason. They share the details that make them look composed, rational, even victimized, while leaving out the part where they ignored boundaries, dismissed concerns, or provoked the conflict. This tactic works because the human mind fills gaps automatically. You don't question the silence. You build your understanding around the pieces offered to you. And when someone controls which pieces you see, they control the conclusion you reach. 9. The micro-disappointment tactic. Some manipulation doesn't come from dramatic conflict or obvious disrespect. It comes from small, almost invisible letdowns, tiny moments that seem too minor to bring up, but happen just frequently enough to affect you. A delayed response, a canceled plan with a flimsy excuse, a promise forgotten, a gesture that feels slightly off. Each one alone is insignificant, but together they create an emotional imbalance that makes you work harder for stability. You start adjusting your expectations, lowering your standards, or putting in extra effort to keep things smooth. Not because they demanded it, but because the pattern of subtle disappointment keeps you uncertain. You hope that if you're patient enough or understanding enough, the inconsistency will stop, and the relationship will return to what it once was. Micro-disappointments don't break you at once. They wear you down quietly until you begin to accept less than you deserve simply because you're tired of waiting for things to feel right again. 10. The false harmony mask. Some manipulators never raise their voice, never argue, never confront anything directly. On the surface, they seem peaceful, patient, impossibly calm. But that calm isn't real harmony. It's avoidance used as control. By refusing to address tension, they force you to carry the emotional weight of every unresolved problem. You mention something that bothers you, and they give a soft smile, change the subject, or say something like, "Let's not make this a big deal." They act as if conflict is unnecessary, as if you're the one disrupting the balance. Over time, you stop bringing things up. You start letting things slide. You keep quiet to maintain the peace they claim to value so much. But the silence becomes a cage. Their version of harmony is built on your suppression. And the more you adapt to keep things calm, the more they shape the relationship into something that revolves around their comfort and your self-restraint. The conflict never disappears. It just lives inside you instead of between you. Manipulation doesn't always come wrapped in anger, arguments, or obvious control. Sometimes it arrives quietly, in delayed approval, in strategic silence, in selective vulnerability, in small disappointments or shifting boundaries. And because these tactics are subtle, people don't notice them until they've already reshaped the way they think, feel, and behave. But awareness is the first form of protection. When you recognize these patterns, something powerful happens. You stop internalizing the confusion, the guilt, the self-doubt. You begin to see the behavior for what it is, not a reflection of your worth, but a reflection of someone else's intentions. You reclaim your clarity, you reclaim your emotional stability, and slowly, you take back the power that subtle manipulation tries to steal. Most importantly, you start surrounding yourself with people who communicate honestly, respect your boundaries, and value connection without conditions. Because once you learn to see manipulation for what it truly is, you can't unsee it.